As introduced by Mr. Lagendijk, my name is Myung-bok Bae. I'm working as editorial writer and diplomatic correspondent at the JoongAng Ilbo, which is one of South Korea's leading newspapers. So to speak, I am working in mainstream media. To begin with, I'd like to express my deep gratitude to organizers, the Journalists and Writers Foundation and the Dialogue Institute, in particular, Geneva Peace Conference team, for inviting me to speak at this honorable venue of Palais des Nations at Geneva. As you know, the topic of this session is peace and journalism. Although I have been working in newspaper journalism for almost 3 decades, I think it's an ambitious agenda beyond my capacity. The subject is so broad and challenging that even a volume of doctoral dissertation would not be enough to deal with it properly and comprehensively. Accordingly, I'm going to focus and concentrate on the role of mainstream media in fostering peace in East Asia, from where I come. East Asia is regarded as one of the powerhouses of the 21st century. We are witnessing a global power shift from the west to the east. If China maintains the current level of economic growth, it is expected that China to catch up America in a normal GDP volume in less than a decade. As a result of spectacular economic rise of China, East Asia is generating almost 30% of global economic output. Maintaining peace and stability in this region is in everybody's interest, not only for those who are living there, but also in other parts of the world. Unfortunately, in East Asia, tensions are rising because of dispute over territory and history. China is strengthening its territorial claims over unmanned islands both in the East and the South China Sea, bringing about dangerous conflicts with Japan and Southeast Asian nations. For example, China and Japan have been quarreling over tiny islands in the East China Sea, which are called Senkaku Islands in Japan and Diaoyidao in China. Tensions around these islets are so high that they could be escalated into military conflicts at any moment. The situation is almost the same in the South China Sea, where China and the Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam and the Philippines are disputing over maritime territorial claims. Japanese and Korean territorial dispute over Dokdo or Takeshima in East Sea or the Sea of Japan is also a matter of concern. On the other hand, Japan is following the road to remilitarization without sincere repentance and apology for its past of imperialistic militarism in the first half of the 20th century. Japan is categorically denying the state's responsibility for conscripting so-called comfort women for Japanese imperial soldiers. Even in the wartime, recruiting sex slaves en masse is an evident violation of human rights. To make it worse, Japanese Prime Minister Mr. Shinzo Abe paid a visit to and offered tribute to Yasukuni Shrine, which is a symbol of Japanese imperialistic militarism. For the Koreans and the Chinese people who have suffered tremendously by the Japanese militarism, Mr. Abe's behavior is being considered as a provocation, and that implies Japan's no repentance for its dark past. Actually, Japan is pursuing its remilitarization by changing the interpretation of its peace constitution, which clearly forbids war with other nations. I think it is understandable for Japan to try to return to a normal nation. What makes us worry about is that Japan is proceeding it without sincere regrets and apologies for its deeds in the past. That's the difference between Germany and Japan. Tensions in Korean Peninsula are also another factor of concern in this region. Over 6 decades, two Koreas have been confronting along the 155 miles long DMZ, that is a demilitarized zone, ironically, which has become the most militarized zone in the world. From time to time, sporadic military clashes between both forces are occurring. Even in October, reciprocal shooting incidents took place both in the Yellow Sea and inland near DMZ. Geopolitically, Korean Peninsula is located at the focal point where interests of surrounding powers such as China, Japan, Russia, and the US have been clashing. That's one of the reasons why Korean Peninsula remains one of the most dangerous hotspots in Northeast Asia. To sum up, the East Asia is working on a thin line which could be broken at any moment. Peace and stability in this region is fragile and is being threatened constantly. This dangerous situation makes the role of media all the more important. To disseminate the spirits of tolerance and coexistence, to encourage pacifism and reconciliation instead of antagonism and hostility, it is the most important role to be played by media in this region. However, it's difficult to argue that media in East Asia is doing the job correctly as expected. In this age of media revolution, the barrier that prohibited new entry into professional media has disappeared. With the generalization of digital media like internet and SNS, media is no longer an exclusive arena of professional journalists. Everybody can write and propagate instantly what they know and what they think on social media. Dramatic increase of freedom of expression is good news, but bad news is that fragmented and unconfirmed information and irresponsible and biased opinions are rampant in digital media. In East Asia, biased, distorted, erroneous information and opinions motivated by patriotism, nationalism, chauvinism, jingoism, or extreme ideas are spreading rapidly through the internet and SNS, which aggravates current disputes and conflicts among nations in this region. It is a vicious circle of misinformation. In East Asia, cyberspace is filled with nationalistic revisionism and provocative propaganda calling vengeance and violence. When we consider current media environment in East Asia, the role of mainstream media is clear and self-evident. Conventional and traditional newspapers or broadcasting institutions, which represent the majority of media consumers, have to return to the basic principles of journalism. With the rise of new media, breaking news competition is not meaningful any longer for mainstream media. Mainstream media has to pursue truth on the basis of solid facts. We have to denounce simplistic reporting based on one-side fact of an object. We have to illuminate every possible aspect of the object. Balance and objectivity are essential values of journalism. We have to avoid the temptation of sensationalism, which goes side by side with nationalism and patriotism. Fairness is also essential. Any kind of prejudice should be ruled out. Even though it takes time and resources, human and material, mainstream media has to make efforts in investigative and in-depth reporting to spread the values of tolerance, reconciliation, coexistence instead of hatred, confrontation, antagonism by deeds, not by words, is what mainstream media has to do in East Asia and elsewhere. To close my remarks, I'd like to add one thing. I think civil society is very important in improving media's quality and inducing it toward the correct path. Civil society has to play the role of a media watcher. Civil society has to keep an eye on media if they do or not their job proper and correctly. If they do good job, you can encourage them. If not, you have to criticize and demand rectification. It's a justified right of civil society. Maintaining and promoting peace is not only the task of media, but also of civil society. In this regard, media and civil society have to go hand in hand for the peace of the world. Thank you for your attention.